last but not least, we have our final panel of the day, appropriately titled Build Back Better, discussion about how portfolio managers can come back stronger than ever in 2021. And we have Simon Littlewood, CEO of SDG Global Exchange and Lee Family Office, Leo Naidoo, CEO of Africa Impact Solutions, Yadav Jani, founder of AFX Hyper, and Joanna Ossinger, Global Markets Editor of Asia Crypto and Czar at Bloomberg News. Thank you. And we have JL back on the line as well.
Hello and welcome. So pretty excited about learning from our distinguished panelists. Let's see, I see that Simon is here. Leon, so you're on. Do you want to just tell us a little bit about yours? I'm Joanna Ossinger from Bloomberg News, as discussed. So I'm the Asia Crypto Czar and Global Markets Editor, and I'll be moderating. And Leon, do you want to talk a little bit about your background and why you're here?
Sure, thanks, Joanna. So my name's Leon, former South African diplomat, served in New York and Hong Kong, and had a career in international development, and recently resigned and now in the private sector, more in a consulting role, advising some companies in terms of their Africa business strategy, and working a little with GDA as well in terms of strategy here on the continent.
Excellent. And let's see, Simon, are you on to talk a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, hi. Sorry, the internet's a bit unstable, so I'll just go with the voice and not the picture. But my name's Simon Littlewood. I'm currently based in Hong Kong, previously based in China, and originally from the UK. And I run a family office which invests globally, and the founder of a company called SDG Global, which invests in sustainable projects globally.
Okay, excellent. So I guess the first thing, talking about building back better, there's been so much that's gone on in the past year. Some of it has been not so great, but there have also been some really interesting things as well. So I guess, what do you see as the landscape right now with kind of the economy and markets globally? Are we in a good place? Are we in a not so good place? I guess, Simon, if you want to start off with that.
Yeah, it's sort of mixed. Obviously, we've still got the COVID issue to deal with, and that hopefully will be resolved as there's more vaccinations worldwide. But that has had a devastating effect on a lot of industries in a lot of countries. Some industries, of course, have done very well, such as the online and e-commerce related stuff. Others, like travel and tourism, have been completely devastated. And travel and tourism is a major industry globally, one of the biggest employers worldwide. And for many countries, places like Kenya, Mauritius, a lot of the poorer developing nations, tourism was a major source of income for them. So it's been a very uneven position. And the question now is how do we get back and try and reduce some of this inequality and try and recreate a lot of the jobs that were lost during this pandemic in the last 15 months.
Right. And Leon, what do you think?
Yeah, no, totally in agreement. I think, it's been a mixed bag, and what's coming out of that is, I think there's a unique opportunity that in terms of defining a recovery and pathing economic development strategies, there's an opportunity in some sense to rebuild better in some sense, what we're focusing around in this session. And I think part of that is the linkages with sustainability, with economic development paths that are more inclusive, with the mandates that government has to really address this challenge that has been exacerbated in terms of unemployment, inequality, and all of that. So I think part of this rebuilding and this re-envisioning and this path to recovery even provides these opportunities. I think when it comes to the larger context of what we're talking about in terms of technologies and financial inclusion and all of those type of things as well, infrastructure becomes a major part of this rebuild. You've got to look at how the pandemic has just exacerbated and in some sense brought a focus on digital access, and how the impact in terms of education, healthcare, all of these subsidiary issues that look at well-being and wellness of peoples, societies, and nations had different type of experiences. We rode the COVID storm in some sense and still riding it with different boats. Some of us are on dinghies and some of us are on big ships.
Yeah, and Jean-Luc, actually, if you can introduce yourself just and then answer the question about where you see things right now.
No, sure. Thank you very much, Joanna. So yeah, I mean, a brief introduction. I'm Jean-Luc Gustace. I'm French, but I've been living in Hong Kong for the last 9 years. And I work for GDA as head of Asia. But actually, I mean, I'm based in Hong Kong. As you know, Hong Kong is very much a platform from Hong Kong to the rest of the world. So obviously, we do have quite a lot of business involving relationships and partnerships and businesses and investment to emerging markets. Emerging markets, that means Southeast Asia, that means India, that means Africa as well. A few things we work on with Simon and also with Leon. So yeah, and before that, my experience has been with family office myself in Malaysia, mainly driving a portfolio of investment into tech, and for sure, I mean, my opinion on this is that what we see right now is quite a formidable opportunity to build back better. I mean, we all understand. I think the entire world understands that the return to a form of normality will not be exactly the return to where we were just before that, and we know that technology and new business models will emerge from that. We don't really know exactly what form that will take, which makes it even more exciting. But for sure, it's I would bet that crypto economics and AI and new data model and new form of transacting will be obviously part of this entire conversation, especially in emerging countries.
Okay, and so what do you think the biggest economic challenges are right now for developed nations and developing ones? You started to get into that. Jean-Luc, yeah.
Okay. Oh well, I think you know what. If I wanted to be a little bit cynical, I would say, and I'm pretty sure Leon would agree. The challenge will probably be more on developed markets. Why? Because emerging countries they have nothing to lose. There's a great chance right now to turn around the tables and to put their names on the map. And obviously that we can't expect a complete change, dramatic change in the way countries I mean, we can't expect a geopolitical revolution, but for sure, I think some emerging countries will definitely come back stronger. I mean, South Africa is probably one of them. Southeast Asia, I think, you know, they are all ready to claim their place in the concert of nations, and obviously China, being the epicenter of that, has a power of attraction that will drive this. So I believe the world we will emerging into will be very much more than ever the South-South world, where, you know, a lot of countries will not necessarily, this is something that we already see right now, countries will not necessarily invest into their relationships with former powerhouses like Europe or even like the US. It will be more between emerging countries. That's what I would say.
Okay. Leon, what do you?
No, just probably to re-emphasize and just add to what Jean-Luc is saying. I think that there's a seminal moment when emerging economies are really, it's challenging. It's not an easy build back and a rebuild. But I think the fourth industrial revolution, the use of technology, its applications across different parts of the economy is providing that impetus to really, the classic phrase of leapfrogging some of the development challenges. And you see that happening. I think, specifically on a micro level during the pandemic, if one looks at education and online learning and how some of the innovations around that even and the use of technology has helped solve some social challenges within education, it's been significant. And there's been a rethink even within continental bodies like the African Union around their development agenda, and to see how technologies drives the economies faster. Same thing applies to agriculture or even to healthcare and to different sectors as well. So I think within the policy environment in emerging economies, you're seeing a greater movement towards and a greater alignment towards rebuilding using latest technologies, increasing infrastructure spend in these critical areas. And all of these type of pathways to development are critical, I think, in terms of building back stronger out of a pandemic like this. Maybe just to say as well, you're getting a greater emphasis on this classic phrase of moderate prosperity. Do you want to emulate development models that really hyper-consumerism, or do you want to look at building a more caring economy, a more focus on a secular economy, this focus on really building economic development paths that really walk towards sustainable human development as well. So these are some of the inflection points. These are some of the critical questions that are being internalized at this point, I think, coming in the pandemic.
Okay. And Simon, do you want to take a crack at this one?
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see if there is an attempt to build back better or to go recreate what we had before the virus. And I think that the critical thing there is climate change, whether there's an attempt to rein in the climate issues and do things differently, and the other big issue of inequality. So I think that the climate issue is one that clearly is now being addressed by both the EU and the US. The new government in the US and the government that came into Europe last year are both allocating significant funds to environmental issues and changing legislation to improve the quality of goods, the recyclability, and push a lot of the liabilities back onto manufacturers and try and reduce the amount of fossil fuel consumption. that potentially has a huge impact, because if it increases the cost of consumer goods and reduces consumption, that'll then feed through to the countries and companies that are supplying those goods. So that there's unfortunately a balance here. If we go down this route of being more sustainable and consuming less, that'll have a direct impact on the countries that are supplying those goods, which are primarily the developing world. So then that raises the issue of equality, because if you end up with a situation where you have a sort of cleaner, greener life in Europe and the US, but at the expense of putting hundreds of millions of people back into poverty in developing markets, what sort of world is that? Is it a better one, or just a different version of the mess we had before?
Okay, that is interesting. So actually, let's go on that. So Leon, what do you think about the issue of the environment, climate change, sustainability, and how we might be looking at that in the next year or two?
Yeah, no, I think the decarbonization focus, which is part of the entire discussions directly related to climate change, is an important one, and I think that there's a lot of consideration and there's a lot of policy focus as well on how economic development strategies bring that into focus. And there's some painful decisions that need to be made, and that has to be done. The will is there, I think, and I think that you're seeing these happen because in building back, we've got to build back, and I agree with Simon, we've got to build back with a level of resilience, because there would be further shocks coming, or there would be other major catastrophes that would probably impact on the global economy. And climate change is one of them. And so, the hard lessons is that that has to be impacted, and it has to see change happening now. It's interesting to see the way green financing is really coming into play, and new financial instruments that are coming into play that are really helping drive some of these solutions as well. The social dynamics of bridging inequality, of dealing with poverty, of bringing more people out of poverty into sustainable livelihoods continues to be a key mandate for many governments. Can that be done in a way where the impact on the environment is balanced? I think that's going to be interesting.
Okay, Jean-Luc, your thoughts on sustainability, climate change?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I can speak about it from an investor's perspective, being based in Hong Kong. I mean, it's extremely clear if you're in Hong Kong and you want to go after investors, institutional investors, or you are a fund, or any financial institutions who want to go after investors, you have to have an ESG value proposition. Either it has to be something encapsulated in what you already do, or you have to create one. But Hong Kong single-handedly has decided, in terms of strategy of the territory under China leadership, that ESG is a key element of its future growth. So yeah, it's really that important. And as a consequence of that, all the investment houses that we have here, and we pretty much have the entire planet, they understand and they execute on this strategy. So I can't really speak about ESG in terms of how it's going to change the paradigm in emerging countries, but for sure, in places like Hong Kong, there is definitely a response that is being brought to the table to rising public concerns about the impact of climate and environmental risk in any investment decision.
Okay, so just going to crypto specifically, Jean-Luc, how do you think crypto is going to help in the Build Back Better idea? Crypto, blockchain, what do you see as really the biggest areas where it's going to contribute?
Well, we already see in many emerging markets how people, and when I say people, I mean retail people, they understand the value of crypto economy. They understand, and they probably understand even better than people who live in developed countries, because they understand, for example, how and why Bitcoin is a fantastic edge against inflation. They understand if you are a domestic helper in Hong Kong, for example, and again, I'm talking about something that I know particularly well. You understand that if you need to send $500 US to your family in Indonesia or in Philippines every month, you understand the difference between sending a cryptocurrency, any form of crypto, and going the traditional route where you're going to first pay very high fees, and second is going to be a very lengthy process. You understand also that traditional players of the market, incumbents, they actually make a lot of money out of international remittance. So you understand immediately the value of this alternative that everybody has now in his hands. Unfortunately, obviously, that comes sometimes with all kind of fraud and massive scams, unfortunately. But that is not going to change the course of the train. The movement we are in is definitely engaged and won't stop. And obviously for corporations, think about cross-border trading. Think about foreign exchanges. Think about trade finance. Obviously, this is also, and on those things we are very much at the infancy of the revolution, I would say. That means we see a lot of more and more MVP, more and more attempts to make it work. And when you consider an entire trade finance process, there are so many different layers and so many different players involved that obviously you can't imagine replacing all of this with a blockchain-based system tomorrow morning. But again, this is very much the direction that we see emerging, and I would bet in the next 3 years it will become more or less mainstream.
Okay.
And I could speak about obviously the national currencies, all the digital assets, the digital asset currencies and all that. But that would be,
you mean the central bank digital currencies, or
absolutely, so CBD,
yeah. Well, actually, so why don't I just ask you, what do you think of those who's doing a good job? Where are they going to take us in the next 3 to 5 years?
That's still me. Sorry.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, I think China is definitely leading the charge here. I was talking about CBD, about trade finance as being made of so far many proof of concepts, but when it comes to CBD, China is 10 years at least in advance compared to anyone else. I mean, being French, when I compare what's happening in terms of CBD discussion between at the French level or at the UK level or at the German level or at the EU level with what's happening in China, there's absolutely no comparison. So yeah, it's almost a reality, and I think this is something that pretty much everyone will have in his on his phone in the next 2 years, next 2 to 3 years.
Wow, 2 to 3 years. Okay, Leon, what do you think?
Yeah.
So crypto, blockchain, central bank digital currencies.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm in agreement. I think the long-term growth prospects look good, you know, in the current context we find ourselves in. I think Jean-Luc, some of the applicability for Africa in terms of trade financing and the solutions around that are really being looked at much more closely as well, I think. I think with blockchain as well, in terms of traceability, in terms of resources, you know, in terms of precious metals and precious gems, in terms of wildlife management and all of those type of things, when you bring the blockchain technology into it, it really brings a lot of capability around it as well. So yeah, I'm of the opinion that there's good growth prospects. I think yes, you know, there's the issues of some of the economies in terms of inflation, in terms of the currency, in terms of what some you know, what value that this sector brings in there is quite key. And I think the next couple of years you're going to see that growth. You know, central banks as governments are looking at it closely as well. But you know, the Nigerian case is interesting, where in some sense, you know, there is this realization that you know, crypto is like the internet; you can't own it. And so I think that there's this alignment in terms of how the growth of it is happening globally, and how there's a match up to how do you manage its growth now that it's emerging in emerging markets in places like on the continent of Africa, and how do you align and how do you manage that going forward? And I think, you know, there's a learning curve going on. There's a learning of best practices, how things are being done, but yet there's a contextualization that's happening as well that's driving the growth prospects in some sense.
Right. Okay. And Simon, what do you think?
Yeah, I think the big issue going forward is how do we fund the significant investment that's needed in emerging markets, particularly the African continent, where you're looking at almost doubling in population to 2.5 billion and a massive urbanization. So that's, you know, it's building offices, apartments, water systems, power stations, roads, all the infrastructure that goes with urbanization. How is that actually going to get funded? Because clearly the African governments don't have the money and the resources. You know, the UN doesn't have the money to lend. So it's the private sector and private investors that are going to have to come in and fund that development. And then how are they going to do that? With traditional loans? It's unlikely that amount of capital will be available in the short term. So one of the ways that could be funded is through the tokenization. So the beauty of tokenization is you can raise money through a token now for a project that might be a long-term project, but turn it into something that is liquid and tradable today. So that significantly reduces the risk for investors because a long-term 20-year project now becomes something that could be traded within a few weeks. It's also something that can then go out to a retail market or be distributed globally instead of just going out to a handful of banks. So you then open up the entire world of investors as opposed to, say, just Wall Street or London. And I think that that is the biggest application of the digital asset space. Not so much cryptocurrency, which is frankly very small. It's more the how we're going to fund $30–40 trillion worth of infrastructure spending that needs to be done in the next 5 to 10 years.
Okay. And so what is kind of the one thing as you think about, say, a Build Back Better? What's the one thing that you think is most important in terms of doing better?
I think it's funding the right sort of infrastructure in the right way. So, you know, if we take Africa, for example, they need energy clearly to develop. Now, are those power stations going to be coal-fired power stations, or are they going to be renewable energy? If it's coal-fired power stations to generate the power for 2.5 billion people, then that blows every climate initiative on the planet. And it's very difficult to see how the rest of the world will survive that. If it's renewable power, that gives a massive boost to the renewable power industry and all the technology involved. So it's decisions like that that are absolutely critical.
Okay. Leon, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I think for me, what would be critical is that, you know, infrastructure has, as Simon has pointed out, and just the innovations around financing for those infrastructure. I think the critical thing is when, you know, within the public-private partnership space as well, when government funds are deployed to a project or to some type of infrastructure, how does that mobilize private capital? And I think what Simon is proposing is quite an innovative way, you know, to see how this sector mobilizes private capital for infrastructure projects long term with immediate benefits as well. I think that's pretty critical. For me, I think in this current Building Back Better as well is boosting digital infrastructure. I think it's not just about bridging the digital divide. It's not only about access to services, but I think there's a lot of, you know, entrepreneurs in emerging markets that want to transform the digital space themselves with their innovations. And, you know, so this becomes critical in the new economy going forward. I think it's going to be very, very key, especially when one sees the applicability of a lot of these things across different sectors, you know, education, healthcare, agriculture, trade finance, all of these things. That's really given more focus, and there is focus, but I think we need to see an acceleration of it as being critical in this current phase.
Okay, Jean-Luc, what must we do better?
Yeah, well, I think I would say transparency and governance probably. I mean, Leon and Simon know that, and especially Leon, because before his actual role, he was a senior civil servant in places like Hong Kong and New York City. I mean, we have a lot of discussions with investors in places like Hong Kong, Singapore, Europe, and we see all this capital, you know, just looking for a place to go in order to finance project and obviously bring a great return. But obviously the questions that we always have is related to governance, is related to legal security, is related to transparency. Because even if you do have, you know, a massive potential, think about Nigeria, for example. Think about South Africa. Think about, you know, I mean, Africa is so vast. It should attract much more capital from the private sector than it does now. The difference between the reality and this kind of utopia is governance, is legal security, and the way the day that will be I believe the country that will be able to provide this kind of assurance to investors from the private sector will probably win the race to access to capital.
Okay, and we actually have to wrap up. So just if each of you can give me in 30 seconds your closing thoughts or comments about it. So Jean-Luc, do you want to start? 30 seconds.
About the panel?
Yeah, just anything on the panel about building back better.
Okay, all right.
You think that,
I think we live in a fantastic time. It's extremely exciting. There will be a lot of challenges, a lot of bumps on the road. But I firmly believe that this is a pivotal moment for humanity, and I mean it. And I believe we are in the right place to witness this big change that's about to happen in the way people transact, in the way people socialize, in the way people work, in the way people take care of their health, in the way people travel. I mean, pretty much every single compartment of people's existence is going to go through incredible changes, and this is what makes this moment extremely exciting.
Okay, thank you. And yes, and Simon.
Yeah, I think we're going to see a very different investor financing funding model. I think what we're going to see is a blending of different fund providers for projects. So we're going to see government more heavily involved, transnationals, philanthropy, private investors through digital assets, traditional fund investors looking for profits, in some cases capped by ESG and other requirements. So a project now is not going to be a simple bank coming in and funding it. You're going to see multiple levels of funding from different providers, each looking for different returns with different ways of doing it. So I think that is how projects are going to be funded in the next decade.
Okay, interesting. Thank you. And Leon, you get the last word.
Yeah, sure. So I think you're going to see a greater interest in value creation, a more focus on a caring economy, a more values-based approach. I think the development and the growth prospects are there, but that's going to be critical. And I think you're going to see a big, everybody wants to move away from mediocrity, doing the same thing over and over again. Everybody wants to move away from just being negative and cynical about everything. And so you're seeing a greater collaboration happening. And I think what Simon points to in terms of the way these nexuses are happening that goes into some of these economic drivers, absolutely. I think everybody wants to be re-energized and revitalized and get things done.
Okay, excellent. There we go. There's Building Back Better. Thanks to everyone for watching. And Tatiana, over to you.
Thank you so much, Joanna. That was so excellent. You did such a great job moderating. And Jean-Luc, thank you so much. Leon, Simon, you guys are our last panel. And this will be the end of the day 2 of GDA Wealth Summit. If you'd like to learn more about GDA, please reach out to any of the team members or follow up at gda.capital or on Twitter.